Hello, everybody. This is Rob FreDette with the podcast HODGEPOD, episode 106. I took a bit of a hiatus in February, but I'm back in action now. And I have a very special guest today. And I'm looking forward to this because it's going to be talking about leveraging meditation practices to elevate your game. If you're an athlete or if you work out, when I talk to Jeff Patterson, he's my guest on this podcast. And I'm really looking forward to this. Jeff, welcome to my podcast. This is something I'm really looking forward to.
Thanks a lot for having me.
So first off, I always like my guests to introduce themselves and just talk about their background. Please introduce yourself to my audience, and then we'll get into the fun stuff.
Yeah, so I'm out here in Portland, Oregon. I've been running a martial arts academy and meditation center here now for a little over 30 years. I got turned on to the meditative arts in a bit of a roundabout way in that back when I was a young guy, I was very into Western boxing. And in fact, we still do that here at my academy. But, at a traditional boxing gym, which is where I was training, it's a lot different than your regular style fitness classes in that it's not one teacher up in front of a group of students running a classroom. It's more like there's 4 or 5 coaches running around the gym, and each one of those coaches might have a handful of fighters that they're working with. Well, at this one particular gym, one of the coaches that was there was a very reputable coach. He had been around for a long time, created champions on both the amateur and the professional arena. And I really wanted to get to spend some time with him, but he wasn't really looking to add on any new athletes. He had a full schedule. And so I would always show up at the gym when I knew he was going to be there. I'd work hard, try to get him to notice me and let him know that if he spent a little time with me, he wouldn't be wasting it.
Mhm.
And finally, after about 3 or 4 months of following him around, he started giving me some tips and helping me out a little bit. And it was only after about 2 or 3 weeks of getting to work with him when he said something to me that changed my life forever. And that he said, if you really want to be a good boxer, you should start doing meditation and Tai Chi. Now, at the time, I was this 19-year-old kid thinking Tai Chi was for older people in the park and not
Mhm.
sure how that was going to help me be a better fighter. But I had a lot of respect for him and I started doing the practice. And through the years, it's changed my life in many ways. And been very fortunate to have thousands of students come through the academy through the years. And I've heard hundreds of stories of how the meditative arts has positively influenced people's lives. And that's what's made me so passionate about trying to get this message out there. It's motivated me to write my last few books and
Mhm.
create my online program and just kind of where I'm at right now.
You had mentioned being like an instructor. I'm a spin instructor, so I know what it's like to be in front of a class and getting ready to teach a spin class and the hard work that goes into it. So, talk about, if you would, the meditation, the meditative process. What does that entail, and can that help anybody out, like anybody who works out or just in their everyday life?
Yeah. So the meditative arts is a very deep practice. And a lot of times people have this narrow view of what meditation is. I break down meditation into kind of 5 different paths that you can follow with the practice. And the first path is the athletic or performance path. And, these days, so many professional athletes understand the benefits of meditation and are using it to help improve their game all the way from basketball players, football players, fighters. I mean, across the board, people are using this.
Mhm.
Then we have the therapeutic branch of the practice. And this is good for our longevity, making a healthy body, helping us keep our energy levels up. There's the medical side of the practice, which all of Chinese medicine is based off of Qigong theory, which is one of the meditative branches. Then there's the philosophical side of the practice, which has always been a passion of mine. I love the philosophy because it teaches us how to open up our peripheral vision and see things from multiple angles, which helps us to be more strategic in everything we do in life. And lastly, there is the spiritual or internal awareness side of the practice that is very profound as well. And so you can see by kind of breaking this down in this way that really anybody can benefit from integrating a meditative practice into their life.
Now, does it calm you down or does it help you work throughout your day? Like you mentioned, professional athletes, I'm sure they have a lifestyle where they're working out and they're playing in front of, thousands and thousands of people. Is that meditative state pretty much a state where they can just regroup so they go on to their next game or their next event?
It helps in a lot of ways. It does help with the focus. So a lot of times, with meditation, one of the most common things I've heard people say is that, I tried meditation and it just didn't work for me. I couldn't quiet my mind. And somewhere along the way, people got this misguided idea that in order to be good at meditation, you have to reach this state of nirvana where nothing bothers you. And it couldn't be further from the truth, because the idea of meditation is that when we recognize these imbalances, we use the movement, the posture, our breath, whatever that is, to bring us back to center. And so if you're doing a meditation practice, excuse me, and you come out of balance 50 times during a session, every time you lose that balance or get distracted and you use your focus to help bring you back to center, you just got 50 repetitions of being distracted and finding that focus again. And if you do this every day, every month, every year, you start to develop this power and this ability to, no matter what happens, whether you're having a bad game or you make a bad play or somebody says something to throw you off your game, you're able to stay centered and focused. And by improving this awareness, not only does it help with outside distractions, but it helps with your own internal dialogue as well and help you to stay focused and positive, which helps improve our performance in anything we do.
So it's pretty much just getting all the noise out and then just staying focused at your task. It's keeping that noise, keeping the outside noise from distraction, right?
That's one of the many benefits, yes.
I remember when I played basketball in high school, and I remember we get to a game, and about an hour before the game, we get in the locker room. It was very quiet. We're starting to get ready for the game. I still remember everyone was very quiet, and then one of the players would pray before the game. So I guess this was a long time ago. That was like a meditative. You're focused. We didn't have any noise or music on, but looking back then, I guess it can apply to even when you work out as well, right? So like if I'm going to teach a spin class, is there anything I can do, or like an athlete or a person who goes to a fitness class, what they can do to be a better athlete?
Are you asking from the performer side or the teaching side?
The performer side, is there anything that we can do?
Good.
Is there anything that we can do for, like, if we go to a fitness class, is there anything like an athlete or like people who go to work out at gyms, is there anything they can do to get ready
Oh,
for class? That's what I meant. I'm sorry.
yeah. So, you know, by integrating meditation into your life, you start to develop a higher sense of awareness. And this is one of the benefits that can feed over into anything you do, whether it is a fitness style class or an athletic competition or even a singing performance, if you
Hmm.
will. Whatever it is, it helps you to recognize your physiology, your mental well-being, your emotional thoughts. And when you become more in tune with these things, you're able to make adjustments before you get too far off down any path. And it's a lot easier to make those fine adjustments and keep that focus than it is to be like a roller coaster, which so many people are in today's society.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting because when you think about like during the course of our days, everything is so fast. We have social media, everything is going 100 miles an hour. One thing I like to do during the day is just take a couple of minutes just to get away from the noise and just take a couple of minutes of peace. And then I kind of get refocused. Is that something that would help out just like in our everyday life?
Oh, sure. Within the meditative arts, there's ritual practices, active practices, and philosophical practices. The ritual practices are when we set time aside every day and we do, for example, a Tai Chi form or a Qigong set or maybe a sitting meditation. And then active practices are things that we can integrate in throughout the day where maybe we count out 10 breaths or do some spinal rotations or a simple movement practice to help us keep that awareness and that focus all day, every day, because the meditative arts is meant to be incorporated as a way of life and not a hobby that we do once in a while. And it makes no sense to think that you can sit down and meditate in the morning and feel calm and peaceful, but then the whole rest of the day you're stressed out and distracted. And so using these active practices helps us to kind of integrate this awareness and this idea of this kind of a mindset into everything we do. And then lastly, we have our philosophical practices, and they can be intertwined in both the active and the ritual practices. And by using these three different pillars, we can pretty much use this concept and this awareness and this development in everything that you do.
I find when I take like 2 minutes of my time just in a peaceful setting, and then when I get back to my day kind of gets refocused, rebooted, and things slow down, go out and get some fresh air for a couple of minutes, and then just come back to work. I find that that helps me a lot in my everyday life. What are some other tips that people can do for their everyday life, maybe to whether you're an athlete or you're at work, that you can do to make your day more peaceful or get refocused?
Well, that's a great practice that you're doing is just taking a little bit of time and coming back and connecting with yourself. With incorporating meditation into your life, probably one of the most common things that I hear people say, other than the distraction, is that I don't have time, or, meditation wouldn't work for me. And you know, anytime somebody is thinking about utilizing the meditative arts, for me as a teacher for over 30 years, one of the hardest things I've come up against is finding a way to help people really see the benefits of this practice, and by integrating them into your life, how much they'll get out of it. And so I've come up with three things through the years that I like people to consider when they're thinking about taking on this practice. And I find that if they do and they spend some time and energy here, that they're a lot more likely to be successful with the practice. And the first one is to think about, why are you being drawn to the practice? Do you want to do this so you stay healthier into your later years to watch your grandkids grow up? Or maybe you're dealing with a stress disorder and you want to learn how to deal with panic attacks and anxiety. Or maybe you're an athlete and you want to learn how to improve your performance. And then once you have that reason to come to the practice, then I want you to go a little bit deeper and think about 10 or 20 things that will positively change in your life by accomplishing this goal. Maybe it's your performance, maybe it's your relationships, maybe it's your interpersonal dialogue, whatever that is for you. And then flip the coin and think of 10 or 20 negative things that will happen if you don't do this. Because if you really put some heartfelt thought into this, it'll help give you the fuel to make it through those times where you're kind of up and down. And after you have that strong why and that reason to do this, then the second thing is really understanding the importance of consistency. Because with any meditation practice, you have to do it on a regular basis to really get the benefits. And there's this ancient Chinese story that I really enjoy that helps illustrate this fact. And it's about this old stonecutter who was very well known all over China. He created these beautiful sculptures of animals and landscapes, and his work was so detailed that it was not even a question when you saw one of his pieces that it was him that created it. And so, because he was so well known, he had people traveling from all over the country to come live with him for a few years at a time to study his trade and to apprentice with him. Well, every day, the stonecutter would start off his day by going down to the river and meditating. And one day, after his meditation, he's walking along the river and he had this profound vision of this huge 6 foot tall jade mystical Chinese dragon. And he was so taken by this vision that he decided this had to be his next project. And so he spent the next few months traveling all over the land looking for this perfect piece of jade for his new creation. Finally, when he found the rock, he took it back to his place And for a while, he would just sit with the rock and study it and try to feel its energy and see how this dragon was going to soon appear out of the stone. Finally, when he began working on the dragon, he carefully placed his chisel very specifically in one place on the backside of the rock and started hammering away with his hammer. Hundreds, if not thousands of times a day, over and over. Nothing seemed to change. A few days went by and still nothing. A few more days went by, and a couple of his apprentices started wondering and second guessing him, thinking maybe you should try something different. A few more days went by. He hit the rock, and this big section broke off the backside of the rock and created this nice, smooth, slightly curved line that was soon to be part of the dragon's back. And one of his apprentices said, "How did you know that that strike was going to break the rock?" And the stonecutter said, "It wasn't that strike that broke the rock. It was the thousands of strikes before it that broke the rock." And with a bit of a discouraged look on his face, the apprentice said, "But I've been watching you, and there was no change. There was no crack. Why did you keep doing the same thing over and over?" And so the stonecutter got down on one knee and he felt the smooth line that he just created. And he said, "Each strike was not wasted. Often the stone was changing beneath the surface. And even though we couldn't see it with the naked eye,
Mhm.
through that consistency and that effort, not only was the stone changing, but so was the one who wields the hammer." And the reason why I like this story so much is because it's closely related to the meditative arts, and that we're practicing this breath work, we're doing these sitting meditations, these movement practices, we're studying these philosophical concepts, and we don't always understand or see the change day to day, but through our consistency, we develop this foundation that feeds us fruits for the rest of our life. And so, really understanding the importance of that is essential when you're coming to this practice. And then the third and final consideration is you need to find a guide. The meditative arts is extremely deep. I've been studying for 36 years and I'm still just a student learning all the time. And if you think that you're going to go out there on YouTube or some app and figure out how to integrate meditation in your life, you're going to waste a lot of time. And in fact, I've seen people come into the academy that have been self-taught and they've been training for 15 years and they get here and they realize that, they're not very far along at all and they're barely scratching the surface. And our lives are short and your time is valuable and you
Yeah.
want to get benefits from this practice. So finding a good reason to do it, knowing what your why is, understanding the importance of consistency, and having somebody in your corner to help point you in the right direction, it'll put you on a path to where you're going to have a lot of chances to be successful with the practice.
That's a great story about the artist there. That was a great story. So if somebody were to start the meditative process, how would they start and how long would that each meditative session be if they wanted to self-meditate? How long would that take and how long should they do it for when they get started?
Well, it's a lifestyle, right? So when you start, you never stop. It's that I usually tell new students that if you can devote 20 minutes a day to a practice and integrate some active practices in throughout the day and keep this up for a year, you'll see so many benefits from the practice that you'll do it for the rest of your life. Now, a lot of times people, when they start the practice, they start looking at it as a chore. I got to do my meditation today, or I got to go do my form today. And when you look at it with that kind of a mindset, you're just waiting for the day that it's not going to work. But when you can get to the point where you start seeing the benefits of the practice and you look at it no longer as a chore, you see it as something you get to do because you're so lucky and fortunate that it's bringing so many positive things in your life. Now your whole perspective changes and now you don't even think about missing a day. I haven't missed a day of my ritual practice in 5 years. And the only reason I did 5 years ago is because I had a hip surgery. If it wasn't for that surgery, I wouldn't have missed it. And so it's one of those things where you want to get to that point where you start noticing where all the gold is at. And once you have that, it's just part of who you are.
So when you're meditating, you're obviously thinking positive thoughts when you want to get, things. You may have goals in your life. You may have positive life, work, relationships, becoming healthier. Is that putting positive thoughts into your mind as you meditate for that duration each time?
There are times where we want to program the mind, and there are times where we want the mind to be empty. In any kind of meditation practice, we have what we call these five underlying principles or five regulations. And briefly, I'll kind of touch on what they are. They're regulating the body, regulating the breath, regulating the mind, regulating the energy, and regulating the spirit. Regulating the body is usually where we begin because it's the one that we see the most immediate changes from. And an example of this would be, think about a time maybe you're sitting down at your computer and you've been there 3 or 4 hours and your shoulders are rounded forward, you're feeling lethargic, maybe your neck's getting sore. And then think about another time when the most important person in your world walks in the room and your body perks up and you feel like you're on top of the world.
Mhm.
Well, these two different energetic states we're in 100% control of all day, every day. And so understanding how to regulate our skeletal alignment and our muscular tension in the body is a huge part of the practice. And a little bit of a deeper level with regulating the body is maintaining some kind of muscular structure and flexibility, eating a healthy diet to keep our energy levels up, and getting an appropriate amount of sleep. All of this would be part of that first pillar. Then in the second pillar, we have regulating the breath. And the breath is an extremely deep topic. And in fact, Qigong is often referred to as the science of the breath because there's literally hundreds of different breathing strategies that we can integrate into our practice. Now, because there's so many different breathing methods, we kind of broadly categorize them into yin methods and yang methods. Yin methods are often deeper, more holistic style of meditations. And an example of this would be every night when you sleep, if you listen to somebody's breathing pattern when they're sleeping, they naturally inhale longer and exhale shorter. And this is the body's natural way of bringing your conscious mind into your subconscious mind, which is where we are when we're sleeping and dreaming. And so, if we want to emulate this style of energetic expression in our meditation practice, we can do longer inhales, soft retentions at the end of the inhale, and shorter exhales to help bring that energy inward, which is great for stress reduction, dealing with anxiety, with panic attacks, for boosting our creativity. There's many reasons why we would do this yin side of the practice. Then we have the yang side of the practice. The yang breath, an example of that would be if you've ever had to push your car, you pick up something heavy, your natural instinct is to exhale, put tension in the breath, make the breath audible. This helps generate energy and power and expand the energy from your centers. And so when we understand how to start using the breath as a strategy, we can use it to help regulate our physical, mental, and emotional well-being. The third regulation is regulating the mind. We already touched on this somewhat when we started talking about getting distracted during our meditations. There's this story of these two old monks, and they're walking down this dirt road after a huge rainstorm. And they come up to this big mud puddle. And on the other side of the puddle is this beautiful little girl, and she's standing there in a white dress, but she's crying. And the older monk, he hollers across the puddle and says, "Is everything okay? Can we help you?" And she says, "I need to be somewhere, but if I walk across this puddle, I'm going to get my dress all dirty." So the older monk, he rolls up his pant legs and he walks across the puddle. He picks her up, puts her on his back, takes her to the other side, sets her down, and she's off on her way. Well, him and the younger monk are walking a couple miles down the road. And finally, the younger monk is just furious and he says, "You know we're not supposed to touch girls, but you did back there at the puddle." And the older monk looks down and says, "I left that girl back at the puddle. Why are you still carrying her?" And how many times in life do we need to get 2 miles down the muddy road before we realize we got to let that thing go? And
Mhm.
so understanding how to recognize these mental imbalances and having the tools to find ways to come back to center is very important. Then the fourth pillar or fourth regulation is regulating the energy. And this is an extremely deep topic and something that we could literally talk for hours about. But the basic idea behind it is once you've reached a competent level in regulating the body, the breath, and the mind, you now have the tools to regulate the energy in the body and lead it inward, extend it outward, to circulate it during different patterns in the body. And this is very powerful to getting different outcomes within our practice. And then the fifth and final regulation is regulating the spirit, which is a very profound idea and something that meditation practitioners will spend their entire life's journey working towards. And so when you take a look at these five underlying principles of any meditation practice, you can see that it can affect anything we do in life.
Wow. You had mentioned earlier about stress and sleep. I can drink 5 espressos and I can go to bed. I can go to bed. I have no problem sleeping. It's one of the things I do. I could, like I said, 5 espressos and I can go to bed in 30 minutes. So it helps sleep, obviously, but then also stress reduction, because stress is a big part of our day as well. Do you see any changes from like when you started 30 years ago to now, like with the distractions we have? Is the stress more or is it less
In myself or in the world?
in the world? People that you
You know,
will teach and come across.
I feel like, and obviously back 30 years ago, I didn't have a lot of students, so I didn't get as clear of a picture back then.
Mhm.
A couple things have happened over the last 30 years. One, I've noticed that in general, people are a lot more open to the idea of a meditation practice. They've seen the benefits, they've read the studies. I mean, there's been studies from Harvard Medical School and the Mayo Clinic on how there's so many different benefits from integrating meditation into their life. And so I think people have bought into the idea. The other side is, you ask about distractions. I think today, with cell phones and the digital world out there, people are so much more distracted than they were back before cell phones and before
Mhm.
computers were part of every 5 minutes of your day. And so there's, I think, more of a need now to have some
Mhm.
kind of a grounding practice like this in your life now more than ever.
That's excellent point. Excellent point. So you've written some books as well. What's the name of the latest book that you wrote? And talk about that. If you, it's called The Yielding Warrior. This is your latest book. Talk about that book as well, please.
Yeah, so the yielding warrior is about a concept that's in the meditative and the martial arts, something that I've been very passionate about for many years. I've broken down yielding into three basic pillars. You have physical yielding, mental yielding, and emotional yielding. Physical yielding is the idea that I push you, you push me, whoever's the bigger, stronger person with the most leverage eventually is going to push the other person over. But instead of us trying to see who the bigger meathead is, when you push me, I get out of the way of that force. And now I can respond with less effort. So I'm not trying to butt heads with you and see if I'm bigger and stronger than you. Now, this is so important in any kind of athletic event because you're going to come up against athletes that are bigger, stronger, and faster than you, no matter what sport you play. And understanding how to deal with this kind of energy and be strategic about it is very helpful. Now, in order to be good at physical yielding, a lot of things have to come into play. You need to be well rooted. The lower part of your body needs to be strong and flexible so you can change your central equilibrium without getting tight. The body has to be relaxed, the breath has to be calm, and the mind has to be present. Now, it's a lifetime journey to really master this skill. However, from day one, by integrating a meditation practice into your life, you start seeing these things with more clarity. And this is where it becomes very interesting. And now we're moving into what I call mental yielding. So, because I've now more in tune with these things inside myself, I also start seeing them with more clarity in other people. So, say, for example, you and I are having a conversation,
Mhm.
and I say something that unsettles you. it's a lot easier for me to recognize that imbalance when it first happens and adjust the conversation to keep us in a happy place than if I'm not paying attention to that. And pretty soon I'm so far off track, you want to knock me upside the head. And
Mhm.
so learning how to use yielding in all of our interactions is extremely powerful. One, we're being more considerate, which is something that we could all do more of. And two, it allows us to be strategic so we can guide the conversation to a positive outcome with the least amount of resistance. And this is great in our relationships, in business and sales and negotiations. I mean, there's so many different applications for this. And then the third and final pillar of yielding is emotional yielding. And emotional yielding is very much like mental yielding, but with our own interpersonal conflicts. You think about when something happens to us, oftentimes we'll respond and we'll go down this path, and we might get an hour, a day, a week down that road and realize maybe that wasn't the best choice. But with yielding and our heightened awareness through a meditation practice, oftentimes when these things happen to us, we're able to step back, be present, not let our emotions get involved, and make a more educated decision that saves us a lot of heartache on the other side. And I've been explaining this idea of yielding now for many years. I've been running this academy for 30 years now. And one of the most common things I'll hear people say is, yielding makes a lot of sense. In fact, I do that all the time. Well, I would agree in that I think everybody does some degree of yielding all the time, but it's kind of like if you or I were to walk into a crime scene with a detective who's been on the job for 30 years, I guarantee you that person would see things about the series of events and the timeline that I
Mhm.
know at least I would have no clue of.
Mhm.
And the meditative arts helps us see things inside of ourselves and inside of other people that I truly believe most people will go through life and never have any clue of without a practice like this.
That's amazing. when you just mentioned the mental part of yielding, like if somebody says something to you, turn it to a positive outcome rather than escalate. That takes a lot of, I don't know how you say, that takes a lot of, inner thought and not like jumping the gun. That's something that we could all use in our everyday life.
For sure. And, I mean, you just think about how much better the world would be if people didn't let their emotions get involved when something came up and just treated everybody with consideration and respect. I mean, that's what it's all about. And when you can learn how to be more settled and more connected and not so distracted, it's a lot easier to approach a problem. If you're already stressed and you're in a bad situation and having a bad day and somebody just says hi to you a little bit off, you can take offense to that. But if you're settled, somebody can call you every name in the book and stay relaxed and not let it bother you at all. And so finding that root and that center and that ability to be unshakable, if you will, is extremely powerful.
That's I've never heard anybody explain that before because you'll see stuff like now social media is like really crazy now, people getting angry, and I think that really adds to the unrest sometimes. That, like I said, distractions, those are distractions when they show people fighting or arguing on social media. I mean, this is like stuff that you can use in your everyday life. I'm going to start using yielding. That's a big, I've never heard it that way before.
Yeah, well, right now, if that sounds of an interest to you, I'm giving away a free copy of my book. If you go to the yieldingwarrior.com/book, you could get a free copy, just pay for shipping and handling. And it's something I put my heart into. So hopefully you'll get some benefit from that.
I will do that. Yes, I will. Thank you. I will do that after we get off the podcast here. So talk about also, the physical part as well. Meditation. Should people meditate? First part of the day, middle of the day? What do you suspect? What's the best time? I find my part of the day is the first part of the day when it's quiet, and then because the rest of the day is nonstop. So what's a good part to do that, or is it like if you need time in the middle of the day to meditate?
You know, I think there's never a bad time to meditate. You can all work it in at any point. However, I really resonate for myself with doing it first thing in the morning as one of my practices because it starts me off in the right mindset. It gets me centered and grounded as I begin my day. And also, it starts me off with a win. I'm doing something positive. I'm programming my body and my mind and my emotions to be in that settled state. And when I do that first thing in the morning, I just did something good for myself and for my family and for my friends, because if I approach my day with that attitude, it's going to feed over to everybody I interact with as well. And so I think it's very powerful that way. Now, I've also found it very powerful throughout the day to have little sessions here and there and come back and revisit that. Even before you go to bed is good to do it. So there's really not one right or wrong specific time. I think you just got to find what works for you, but I think it is a great way to start the day.
Are there any people that you've taught over the years that really improved to their life that you could have a testimonial to that you could talk about? Like when they started, if they started meditating and then they changed their life, like a 360.
Yeah, I've literally heard hundreds of those stories through the years. One that I always mention is a long time student of mine, and the reason why is because I've grown very fond of him. He's been around for about 30 years. He started with me back when he was in his early to mid 50s, and he had a very high stress career. He was stiff as a two by four. He had high blood pressure, very stressful life at the time. And he came to me wanting to learn sword and stick fighting. And we still did that. But after a couple weeks of getting to know him, I mentioned, it'd be great if we did some breath work and maybe did a little bit of meditation. And I thought it'd be very helpful for him because he was so stiff. And here 30 years later, he's still at the academy. Watching him after about 6 to 12 months, his whole physiology changed. He let go and was able to be more relaxed, and it basically changed the last quarter or last third of his life to be more relaxed and have a better life because of it. And that's why he's stuck with it for the last 30 years. And seeing those kinds of transformations for me really hit home. Running a martial arts studio, it's always fun taking somebody out and having them do well in a jujitsu or a boxing competition. But when you change somebody's life and their perspective and their ability to deal with stress, or making them happier in how they live their day, those are the kinds of stories that really kind of hit home for me.
Yeah, stress is a big killer too. I worked in a stressful profession years ago, and I got out of it because it was just very stressful. That person that you were just talking about there, that probably added years to his life.
Yeah, I'm sure it's helped. Yeah, he's still, you see him now, he's in his mid 80s, and nobody would guess he's as old as he is. And he's still coming in here to the academy and he's training, and he's just a great guy.
What's the name of the academy that you have in Oregon? And talk about that if you would.
So we have 4 adult programs here at the academy. So we kind of target them under 2 names. We have the Portland Tai Chi Academy and then Northwest Fighting Arts. In our Northwest Fighting Arts program, we do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, Western boxing, and Eskrima. And then in the Portland Tai Chi Academy is all the meditative arts, where we do, Tai Chi, Qigong, sitting meditation, standing meditation, breath work. And so you'll have different crowds and people that come in for both of those.
Wow. So when meditation is part of your daily routine, you have to be in a quiet place. Your mind has to be in the moment, no distractions. When should, if somebody were to start meditating, when would they start seeing improvement? Do they notice it right away, or do they notice maybe their life changing and during the course of their day, do they find themselves doing tasks better, like at work, or less stressed? Is that possible as you improve each day?
Well, a couple of things with that. The first one is you could easily do one session and walk away feeling refreshed and less stress and benefiting from that one practice. The meditative arts, however, it kind of builds momentum, and doing every day, year to year, you start to get deeper and deeper into the practice and develop higher and higher levels of awareness. It's kind of like think about your awareness when you go to grab a glass of water out of the cupboard versus having a brand new baby in your arms and you're petting their head. You're trying to be real careful so you don't injure them, and that kind of attention there. The meditative arts helps us develop that sensitivity and that attention and that deeper feeling in everything we do. And the more we practice, the deeper we feel it and the more that we benefit from our time that we've invested in the practice.
I also notice like during the day goes by fast, and some days my head's spinning. It's like when life, hit goes crazy, sometimes your head just spins. So hopefully I'm going to start doing this meditation. So maybe would that help if I meditate on a daily basis, and would it help like from the head spinning and that stress level that will come down, you think?
It helps everything settle. You start to find a more grounded way of being in everything you do. And again, really if you're thinking about taking on this practice, I would go back through those three things of considerations we
Mhm.
talked about earlier and really put some heartfelt thought into that, because there's going to be times where you're going to get up tomorrow morning and the alarm's going to go off and you're like, yeah, I'll just do it tomorrow. And you really want to have that reason to stay consistent, and like I said, if you do it and commit to it and do 20 minutes a day every day for the next year, you'll get to the point where you'll never stop. You'll see so many benefits from it. It'll be one of the best things you've ever done for yourself, but you just got to put in the work.
Mhm. Yeah, that's the big thing. Commitment is the key. And what other facets or what other areas of meditation that maybe we have not covered would you talk about to my audience?
Well, the only one of the things that we haven't really touched on much, and it's something that has always been a true passion of mine, is the philosophical side of the practice. And when you start a meditation journey, there's things from movement practices to still practices, whether you're doing a sitting practice or a standing meditation, there's breath work, there's mental training exercises, there's energetic circulations, there's the philosophical side of the training. And the philosophical side of the training can be a lot of fun because it helps open up your mind to new perspectives. One of my long time ago meditation teachers, he would always have me memorize these sayings. And, I'm not sure if you're familiar. Have you ever heard of the Tao Te Ching?
No.
Okay, the Tao Te Ching is a very famous book, and they say that the only book that has made more copies than the Tao Te Ching is the Bible. And so it's been around for a long time. It's very well known. There's 81 sayings in this book. And part of my earlier training was to memorize that book. And I would go through and I would say those 81 sayings every day for about 12 years.
Hmm.
And it's not impressive about the memorization part because anybody can do that. The idea is that when you get past the memorization, you start looking at these sayings and these life lessons from 30 different angles. And you get to the point where you can find this lesson in
Mhm.
everything that you do in life. And when you start seeing things and how they open up that perspective for you, it's really an amazing benefit from the practice.
Wow. Well, I'm going to get the book on your website there, and I'm going to pay for the postage and handling. And I would like to get you back in 6 months because I'm going to try the meditation and report back to you if you would come back on. I'm really looking forward to this. I think I need some meditation in my life, and I'm going to commit to it. It's fascinating. I've learned so much in this everyday world that we have. We're so busy. Maybe just spending some time just meditating can help you in your everyday life, as you've expressed. Quite fascinating. And it's never too late to start meditating, right? It doesn't matter what age, right?
Doesn't matter where you are. And if you go to that website, theyieldingwarrior.com,
Mhm.
we have a 2-week trial there where you can check out our meditation program. And in that platform, we have movement practices from Qigong, from Tai Chi, from standing meditation, sitting meditation, breath work, everything that we've been talking about, all of these different practices, so you can find what works for you and what you like and start building an evolving life practice with what's there. And there's so much content up on that members only page that, if you tried to learn everything, it'd probably take you 15 or 20 years. So there's a lot of stuff in there.
Can you repeat that one more time where all that information is with the different you just mentioned now, please? Because I think that's important.
Yeah, theyieldingwarrior.com. And there's a 2-week trial up there where you can go and check out the membership as well.
Okay. Well, Jeff Patterson, I want to thank you very much for coming on my podcast, HODGEPOD. I learned quite a bit. I'm gonna start meditating, getting into that meditative state, because I think I need to just like tone it down a little bit. And I really appreciate you coming down. You've had the book called the latest book, The Yielding Warrior. And I can't thank you enough for your time. You have 36 years of experience. And for you to spend some time on my podcast, I'm truly honored. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.